The Traepeng Sangke ecotourism project is a mangrove planting initiative and enterprise in Kampot. Traepeng Sangke is a small fishing village in Kampot province which has devoted itself to growing mangroves and promoting and helping the ecosystem on its property. The residents of the community, along with the help of tourists and volunteers, grow mangroves and replant them around the river their village is situated on. This in turn creates a habitat for the fish that are part of the villagers' livelihoods. They've created a project that promotes the welfare of the village and the health of the local ecosystem. The mangroves also help to improve the general environment and are very important to the ecosystem as a whole. Mangroves in Cambodia have suffered greatly due to rapid land development. As the government continues to develop rural areas, they dredge sand from the coast, which destroys the mangrove ecosystems. They also take sand and move it to create artificial land. While visiting the village, we saw this near the mouth of the river. The community hopes to fight this issue, as it is so close to home for them. Another aspect of this project is ecotourism. The village houses and invites tourists to come and experience the beauty of the nature around them, as well as help them grow the mangroves. This not only gives them extra hands, but also extra revenue. Tourists enjoy helping and getting to stay in such a beautiful area. All in all, the Traepeng Sangke ecotourism project is one that helps the village, helps the ecosystem, and provides tourists intent on volunteering a constructive way to offer their help instead of going to an orphanage or building something the community doesn't need. One thing that we learned during our time in Traepeng Sangke is that they are at risk of having their land grabbed. What this means is that the government can sell the village out from under them to corporations, since they technically live on government land. The Khmer Rouge regime abolished all land ownership in 1975, and all land was ceded to the government. After the Khmer Rouge fell, many of the rural villages still lived on land that belonged to the government due to this. The project has taken some steps to prevent this from happening, however. Their main focus to stop land grabbing is to have foreign donors. By having foreigners aware of the existence of the village, and having a vested interest in the survival of the village, the government will be less likely to do anything. The presence of donors in these projects means that there's international interest in the community, and the government must stay away as to not raise any suspicions with international companies or other governments. The project's plan is to have foreign donors to ward off action until the rival party comes into power. They do not currently have a donor, and the chance of the incumbent party giving up their office is not very likely, so the survival of this village is constantly under threat.
We also learned about the usefulness of mangroves while visiting this community. They have a huge impact on the fishermen, including a 300% increase in their daily income. The village surrounding the project itself is home to hundreds of fishermen and their families, so it is very important that they have a sustainable livelihood. Looking at the actual money coming in, it may not seem like much to us Americans, but it can mean the difference between a family struggling to eat and one being able to take care of themselves. The mangroves also help to improve and protect the environment. Not only are they a natural barrier for floods during storms or typhoons, they are part of a very complex ecosystem. The marine life that live within these mangroves rely on them for food and shelter, and the fishermen rely on the marine life. The mangroves can also help to improve air quality within the community. Mangroves are known as carbon sinks, meaning they store more carbon than they release. Because of this, carbon is released more slowly, and it can help to combat rising emissions. By doing this, it helps to fight against, even if in a small way, climate change. According to the chief, they have already experienced problems with the climate change currently occurring, so maintaining and continuing to plant the mangroves is extremely important. The mangrove preserve has been generally successful through many of the things that they have done. The organization itself recognizes that they are an attraction centered around ecotourism and advertise using this label. The popularity of ecotourism has been on the rise for years, and in 2015 the consulting firm Deloitte found that travelers aware of sustainability issues in more traditional and Western travel, and those willing to pay for more environmentally sustainable travel, have increased by over a third in the past decade. This is important because projects like Traepeng Sangke greatly benefit from this awareness. The community has been able to get recognition and funds internationally because of their helping the environment. They have also brought to light corruption issues within the Cambodian government, especially the frequency and severity of land grabbing. Generally speaking, when communities in more developing countries are seen helping the environment or fighting against government control, they tend to get international attention. Through their work with helping the environment and fighting these issues, Traepeng Sangke has been able to gain investors.
Despite its successes, There are some areas in which this project could improve. While we were there, the community chief, Soom Heem, had expressed that the project had had a heavy reliance on donors. They had recently lost their donor, and were afraid about their existence without the security a donor provides. The fact that they are so reliant on a third party, and do not have one at the moment, really highlights some downfalls in this project. At this moment, they could have their properties seized by the government at any moment. Another issue similar to this is that the project isn't self-sufficient. What makes a good social enterprise is relying on profit instead of donation. I'm sure the project makes money from fishing and tourism, but the fact that they're struggling without donors is a weakness. They need donors for donations and security. Having one thing be so integral to your initiative is a considerable weakness. Another possible downfall of this project is that it might start losing its culture and simply become a tourist attraction. This is called acculturation. This village should be first and foremost a mangrove fishing village. I'm not sure to what extent this village has succumbed to acculturation, but it's definitely something they need to actively avoid.
Now there is the question of where the money that they receive through the different channels is going. We were informed by the community chief that the difference mangroves can make in a fisherman's lifestyle is immense. $2.50 is made a day by fishermen without mangroves, while $7.50 is made with that addition. The minimum wage in Cambodia is $153 per month, so their current levels make them about $72 more per month. The money the fishermen make go to their own families, so they can afford food as well as other necessities. We can assume that the money that they receive from donors and tourists both go towards maintaining their community and continuing to plant mangroves in order to combat environmental changes and ecological loss. As expressed earlier, the chief told us that the community is reliant on their donors. After losing their Italian donor, they fear that the community might be torn apart by the government in a land-grabbing scheme. This has happened many times around them, and the chief cites their tight-knit community as the reason that the government hasn't come in to take their land. However, we believe that the project could eventually become more self-sufficient and less reliant on donors. By creating more activities and things for visiting tourists to do, they could receive the income needed to maintain the program through that, rather than relying on donations. Many villages in the neighboring province of Kokong are quite well recognized, and this is because they offer certain amenities that Traepeng Sangke does not. However, we do believe it is important for this village to maintain their culture, so there is a fine line. Communities around the world have developed in response to tourist needs and wants, and have greatly lost their culture, and this is not something we want happening in the small community of Traepeng Sangke. The community needs to seek a balance that will give them economic autonomy while still maintaining their cultural identity. Another way that they could become more self-sufficient in regards to tourism would be to increase their advertising. Although the upfront costs may seem high when marketing, the results would be well worth it. When researching this community and project, it was very hard to find any information on them. If they had an increase in advertising, they would increase their international visibility, and there would be more income from tourism coming in as a result. A lot of the advertising that they already do is aimed more towards locals and those who would be day traveling to the community. They could attract many more international tourists and volunteers with this change. Another issue that we noticed within this is that the only way many people hear about this community is through local tour guides, because nobody within this project speaks English to our knowledge. We feel that they could greatly benefit from an English speaker working within the community and project, as this would allow a better flow of communication with volunteers and tourists, as well as help in the marketing department. Several villages in the neighboring Kokong region that offer similar experiences in volunteering are much more well known internationally. It is possible that this is due to a higher availability of English speakers and more advertising aimed at international visitors.
Another avenue that this project could take is to connect with other ecotourism projects and fishing villages. There is strength in numbers, and these villages could fend off government land appropriation better if they pooled resources and organized. While at the Metakaruna, we happened to run into a man working for an NGO providing legal services for those who are resisting land grabbing. If these villages networked and reached out to this NGO, they could have better security as a group. They could even share clientele, organizing trips that had tourists going from village to village. There might be a lot of obstacles in the way of uniting the ecotourism projects and communities, but I think there'd be a lot to gain from this kind of network. The last direction that Traepeng Sangke ecotourism project could take is to expand its property past the pole. When we visited the village, we were taken to a silted pavilion and shown a pole with a strobe light demarcating the edge of the village's land. Something I had noticed is that no mangroves are growing out of this area. That means that the beneficial effects of fostering a mangrove habitat were localized to their small area. If they wish to make a bigger impact on the environment, they could seek to expand their reach. More land would also mean more draw for tourists, and a larger capacity to house tourists. I think physically broadening the horizons would increase their ecological effect as well as their tourist revenue.
Overall, this project is really beneficial for the villagers and environment. Visiting Traepeng Sangke really reminded us of home and some of the changes that we see our own environment going through, and it was amazing to see the work that they do to protect the community around them. The community is absolutely beautiful, and it's wonderful to see them working together to help each other. There are many things that they could work on, but we see them evolving in the future and continuing to improve the environment and awareness of environmental issues. Our communities could stand to learn something from their commitment to protecting the mangrove ecosystem, as our mangroves are in danger of being destroyed through urban development. The U.S. government may support the growing of mangroves more than the Cambodian government, but the Cambodian communities are more aware of their importance than American communities.